These are based on economic science. This is based on how wealthy communities become wealthy. This is based on economic culture that leads to prosperity. This is not just theoretical. This is not me something I just pulled together and made up. This is based on the fact that I've been a finance professor for many, many decades, and I understand where wealth comes from, how wealth works, the primary methods by which you can accumulate wealth in power, also how wealth links back to power, how wealth affects every aspect of our lives, how wealth affects our relationships, how wealth affects our communities, how wealth really affects our access to this thing called freedom. We talk all day, we talk a lot about freedom. We talk a lot about, yeah, yeah, black people want to be free. I don't think you can ever be free if you don't have an economic plan. If your economic plan is to stay broke, then the second part of your economic plan should be to stay enslaved because capitalism is brutal. Capitalism is built on various forms of slavery. Capitalism is built on power and control. Right now, even as you see what Trump and Musk are doing in Washington, they're able to do these things because they have economic power. Did anybody see when they were negotiating with the Ukrainians and basically they said, "Give us all your stuff or else," right? So that was just them making a power move. That was them saying, "Hey, we have all the chips. You ain't got no cards up in here. Like you ain't got no say up in here. The only say that you have is the say that we decide we're going to give you." And this has been a consistent theme throughout history. If you want to talk about white supremacy, let's talk about it. One thing about white supremacy that's really interesting to me is that there's a consistent historical narrative that basically says that America and not just America, but Britain has done this as well. They will kind of promise you things and be nice to you and give you some things, give you some rights, give you some freedom, give you some access. And then when they decide that it's too inconvenient to continue to give you those things, they pull it right back. My wife was talking to me about the my wife was talking to me about I want to say it was the Lakota Indians, I believe. And basically they had told the Lakotas, they gave them a contract, piece of paper and everything that said this land is yours. I think it was related to the Black Hills or something like that. Feel free to fill in the gaps in the chat if you are familiar with this case. I'm not familiar with all the details. I just kind of heard what she described to me. And basically they just, kind of like wrote it all out. They're like, yeah, this is yours. Yeah, hey, bud. Yeah, take all that land over there because, we kind of screwed you people and we want to be nice now and we want to be friends. So you can have all that land. And they wrote it down and they signed a document. And you know what they did? They basically just said, well, I mean, yeah, we know we promised you that, but that don't mean that it's really yours. They took it back. They took that land back. And they have been suing since, for over 100 years, trying to get, and they're like, we got receipts. We have paper. It was on paper. Like you can't renege. You can't renege. It's on paper. Well, I mean, you can't call Native American people Indian givers because y'all know Massa was the original Indian giver. If there ever was one, we shouldn't call it. We shouldn't use that term. It should be like Caucasian givers. The Caucasian givers. They give it, then they take it away. And the reason they're able to do that is because one of the things that I think is critically important that we don't seem to always get is that power kind of has its own language. Power has its own currency. Power makes its own rules. And money is power in America. You live in a society that worships money. And so if you want to really empower your kids and empower your grandkids and empower your family and empower yourself, one of the best things you can ever do is really give your family and give your kids just a kick-ass economic action plan. Just like literally drill, train at the highest levels of economics, ways to do business in a productive and ethical way, ways to do business in a way where you understand that this is all part of a broader God's portfolio. This is part of a broader ecosystem. It's not about worshiping money. It's not about sitting around just counting dollar bills and thinking that because you have money, your life is great. It's about sort of saying, okay, how do I not only do I get access to the things that I need, but I can get access to the things that I need in a way that it doesn't disrupt the rest of my life. It doesn't disrupt the environment in which I live. It doesn't disrupt my mental health. It doesn't disrupt my physical health. It doesn't disrupt my integrity. It doesn't cause me to harm the people that I love, right? A lot of times we forget about that. We can get so caught up in the money that we end up forgetting about all the things that money can impact. And if you're chasing money and you're sort of screwing up every other part of your life, then you're not going to be happy about about the money. Money will not make you happy. That's why there's so many people who say that they tried to invest, they started investing, and they hate it. They were traumatized by it. I was watching Squid Games. I'm going to get into our Powernomics training in a minute, but this is part of it. You guys know I literally speak to whatever God tells me to say, and He's telling me to say this, so I'm gonna say it to you. Anybody been watching the Squid Games? Anybody watch the Squid Games on Netflix? It is so good. It is so crazy. It's the only show I've ever seen where after the show is over, the audience it has PTSD. Right? I don't know if anybody else can feel that way, but when you watch the Squid Games, you're like, oh Lord, I need Jesus right now. This too much. This too. Y'all need to stop this. You shot you just shot those people. So anyway, Squid Games is a crazy, crazy game. But if you watch Squid Games closely, and if you understand how this the Squid Games works, you'll know Squid Games ain't nothing but about economics. All Squid Games is an economic lesson. That's all it is. Everybody in Squid Games is a person that has a financial problem. That's what they are. And what Squid Games represents, among many things, they're making many social statements in this show. But one thing that Squid Games represents is how those who are financially secure are in a position to exploit those who are financially insecure. But they're not just exploiting people who are financially insecure, they're exploiting people who are in financial trouble and who have financial addictions. So what they're doing is they're not just exploiting people who are poor. Most poor people are not going to go into a building and possibly get gunned down by machine guns in order to get money. What they're leaning on is the fact that you're so deep in debt that you've become hopeless. They're also leaning on the fact that you are an extreme risk taker because that's how you lost all that money because you thought you were investing, but really you were gambling. They're also leaning on the fact that you probably have some sort of financial addiction. If you notice in the game, watch the show. If you want to really understand finance, watch the show. This is an excellent example of behavioral finance. Behavioral finance is what I specialized in my dissertation. And behavioral finance, if you look at people's behavior, whenever they were thinking, "Oh my God, this is crazy. What are we doing? We got to get up out of here." You know what they would do? They would say, "Okay, this is a free and fair game. You can leave if you want to, but before you go, let us show you how much money you would be giving up if you go." And then they turn it on and they gamify it. You hear the music like the casinos, do 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 do, and the lights, and then they have this big piggy bank with all this money in it, and you see their eyes, and they're like, "Oh." Oh, like it's like telling the crackhead, like, okay, I know you want to get off the crack. I know you want to be well, but before you do that, let me just pull out a little hit for you right quick and let you just kind of look it over and decide if this is really what you want to walk away from. You really want to walk away from all this, or right? Like, or your ex-girlfriend that you knew was toxic, and she's like, okay, well, before you go, why don't you come by and I got something in the bedroom I want to show you real quick, right? And so long story short, this is how dopamine works. This is how various financial addictions work. This is going to show itself big time in the United States because all these black men right now online on television, including Stephen A. Smith, all the way to Jamie Foxx and Kevin Hart, are mass promoting a gambling addiction at a major scale. Club Shay Shay, they're all promoting gambling. Joe Budden, all these guys are promoting gambling. I give a shout out to my friends over at Earn Your Leisure. I don't know which one it was, but he was smart enough to notice this as well. So I want to just support him on this point that what you're doing is you're really spreading a tremendous amount of poison in the community. You're really destroying people's lives. I think I saw Stephen A. has something he's doing with ESPN where he's got the Stephen A. list or something that where you can follow the list and gamble and all that, right? And so these gambling addictions are going to be a big deal. It's going to be a big problem. It's happened before. It's all happened before. It's just that when time goes by, people forget. So they're gonna forget, and and then it's gonna happen again. They're gonna be like, "Oh my God, what happened? Was it Ian Dunlap who did that?" Well, shout out to Ian because I'll tell you that I back him 100% on that. This is gonna be a problem because a lot of people don't know the difference between investing and gambling. And so when you see people they go out and they say, "Oh, I tried to invest and it didn't work. I lost everything." You'll just know instantaneously that that person did not invest in an appropriate way. Investing is not something where you're rolling the dice. It's something where you're conservative, you're careful, you protect your resources. One of the best investors in the history of the world is Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett, you ain't never gonna see Warren Buffett betting it all at a casino. You will never see that. So anyway, that's it. That's the one thing I want to mention. A couple things I want to mention really quick as we move on. Number one, we had to move the Miami event. I'm so sorry. We had kind of a situation emerge, and so the Miami event, we were going to do a millionaire training camp, and I think we're going to incorporate a lot of stock option stuff in there as well. If you want to join us, it was going to be in March, but we're going to have to move it to May. So the new date is going to be May 9th and May 10th. So I'm so sorry. I see Kendall Green. I don't know Kendall if you were thinking about coming, but either way, though, I'm sorry, guys, but we had to move it because of some stuff that kind of went on, and I had to, out of respect for team members, kind of move the date a little bit. Should we pull out a Robin Hood? I don't think you have to pull out a Robin Hood, Jen. I don't think you just because they're doing all that stuff don't mean you got to do it too. Robin Hood's fine for investing. It's just, but they're gonna have a whole lot of other stuff going on too. So just make sure you understand that. So May 9th and 10th, those are the dates. And we will be covering not just investing in wealth, but we'll cover stock options as well. For those of you that have an interest in that, I think stock options are a great thing to understand. Number two, I want to reiterate I've invited all of you to jump in and do business with us, where you can make money. So what I did was I took my book, The Ten Commandments of Black Economic Power. It's a best-selling book. It's extremely good. Everyone loves it. And I reduced the autograph copy price from $40 down to 8. So if you want to make extra money and you like the message and you want to do things in your community, you want to build your own little makeshift school by bringing people together and teaching economics, you're qualified to do that. I endow you with the ability to do this. Feel free to use us as a supplier. Buy the books from us for $8. Let others buy the books from you for whatever fair price you would like to charge, and turn that into a business. You know, why not make a business out of something that you love and you already believe in? And then it helps everybody. It helps the school because we got to raise money and we can't go out bet. We don't take money from the government. We don't take money from corporations. So, but we got to raise money. I'm trying to do the Booker T thing. We're building an institution like Tuskegee. He built Tuskegee 100 years ago. I'm building the Black Business School now. And then also the other thing is it can help you, for those of you that are looking for ways to generate that extra stream of income. I'd love to partner with you. So if you want to get access to the books, you can go to tencommandments.boycewatkins.com. That's tencommandments.boycewatkins.com. Keep that URL nearby. I may have to stop it soon just because the team is getting a lot of orders. We're getting thousands of orders, right? I'm signing all the books and it's exhausting, but I don't mind. That's just my little tiny part in the process. And literally our middle child, the poor thing, she's shipping them out to all of you. And literally there's hundreds and hundreds of orders right there in the other room. So if you want to participate and do the damn thing, let's just do it. Let's make it happen. Tell me about, and then tell us about your groups. I'm gonna have you guys send us pictures and videos of what you're doing in your local community, because damn it, we got to do this. We can do this and we will do this, and we're taking this whole thing over. I don't care about the educational system and what they're doing wrong or what they're doing right. I wish they would do better, but they're not going to do better. So we can do this. We got this. So anyway, that's my little rah rah. And also with the workbooks, if you even want to do our kids' workbooks and get some of those at a massive discount, you could take 70% off the price. Just go to financialworkbooks.com. That's financialworkbooks.com. Use that code word morning 70, all one word, and it'll drop 70% off the price. It drops the price from like $40 to 12 or something, and you can buy those and you can either resell them or just use them, give them away, whatever it is you want to do. Whatever. I'm just pushing you to just do so. We got to all do something, whatever we do. All right, so let me open up Dr. Claude Anderson's book. We've been reading the Black History Reader, and I love what he says at the end of this book. His website is powernomics.com, and that's where you can go to get all of his stuff. And he gives his regards. I talked to him last week, and he's he's older, and it's a struggle, but we fighting. And he told me to tell you hello, and he completely endorses and supports what we're doing right here. If he didn't support it, I would not be doing this Powernomics thing, because I don't want anybody to think that his ideas are my ideas. No, his ideas are his ideas, and I'm sharing his ideas. Okay, so here in this book called The Black History Reader on page 277. Dr. Anderson talks about a Powernomics agenda, which is ethno-aggregation. I think this is an appropriate way to finish this book, actually, is his concept of ethno-aggregation. And so he has a question here. Question 101 is, what steps should blacks immediately take to become a self-sufficient, competitive group in America? And so what he's really talking about is life after DEI. You know, what happens when they do to us like they did to the Indians, and they just cut you off. They cut off, you work your butt off, you go do the right thing, you've been, waiting for the DEI checks and all this stuff. And then suddenly they just decide, oh, you know what, we don't don't like DEI anymore. DEI must DIE, right? That's what they've all been saying. And then they just cut everything off, and then you're out back where you started. That's not an economically safe place to be. You should not be economically dependent on a person or entity that is not dependable. You should not depend on those who are not dependable. And America has proven consistently that it's not a dependable place to get your resources. America has proven consistently that you got to have a plan B, C, D, E, F if you want to survive. So here's what he says here. He says to become self-sufficient and competitive in America, blacks must first practice ethno-aggregation, a powernomics principle that is best defined as a voluntary concentration of individuals' resources and votes around a population's common need to improve their economic and political competitiveness. The term ethno-aggregation may be new, but the concept is not. It describes a behavior pattern used every day by religious, gender, language, and ethnic groups. The culture of these groups encourages members to rally around their respective common characteristics or attributes, ethno, in order to pool their collective aggregation or their collective resources, which is aggregation, and empower themselves to compete with non-group members. So the ethno aggregation concept, to me, is most effective when you're talking about economics. It's not so effective all the time when you're talking about Democrat Republican stuff. For a very long time, the narrative was that we would ethno aggregate politically by everybody showing up and voting for the Democratic Party. And unfortunately, a lot of you, for good reason or bad reason, it's your right to do this, have decided that that's not the strategy that you want. I personally don't vote for the Democrats or the Republicans, but I have lots of friends who are Democrats. I have lots of friends who are Republicans. However, when I talk to my friends who are Democrats and Republicans, because I like talking to everybody, I will not reject you because you exercise your free right to vote for whoever the heck you wanted to. What I find is that the common variable, there's some common factors that we can rally around that don't end up being nearly as controversial. Right now, if I ask you a question about something that is tangential or secondary, like I say, do you think the liberals or the conservatives are right? Then that's going to cause a fight. If I ask you a question about gay versus straight, and is marriage between a man and a woman, or between two people, period, or two animals, whatever it is you want to do, then you're going to have a fight. If I ask you about things like feminism or transgender issues, there's going to be a fight. If I ask about pro-life, pro-choice, there's going to be a fight. But if I say, should black people have better families? Are black families better off or worse off than we were before? There's not going to be a big disagreement except for when you get into the blame game. That's the only time there's going to be a disagreement. But everyone's going to say, yeah, we're not where we need to be. We need to do better. And if I say, are black families important? Do you think that black families matter? You're going to get a yes across the board. If I say, should black people be healthy mentally and physically? Do you think that a black community is going to be more prosperous if we work on our physical and mental health? There's not going to be any dispute on that. There's not a dispute. Like if I say, well, should maybe we should implement preventative health programs where we think about what we eat and exercise before we get the cancer and the diabetes and all these other side effects that come from eating horrible food and not exercising, then most of you are gonna agree, right? Right now, for example, I could in this room say to you, why don't we all agree right now? Give me a yes in the chat if we can all agree. See, this ain't hard. Let's give a yes if we can all agree that we're gonna do our best to try to prevent health problems before they happen. Give me a yes if we can agree. Like I told you, I always talk to you all in the morning class, and I say I got up at 5 a.m. and I went to the gym because my wife drags me out there every day, and I thank her for that. I thank God for my wife because getting up every day and going to the gym, drinking lots of water, minimizing my salt intake, keeping the candy out of the house. That's a big deal. That's huge. That's huge, right? So, and this is not hard. This is not expensive. I don't have to buy pills to do this. I don't have to pay medical doctors to do this. You pay the medical doctors to not even really to manage the problems that you allow to create. You buy the pills because you're hoping to reverse the problems that were preventable in the first place, right? That you got to pay the hospital because you're sick now because you didn't do the basic stuff. But believe me, if everybody in our community just said, we're going to have a basic health plan where we're all going to get up and do some walking, a little jogging. Every morning, we're going to try to get up and sweat a little bit. Even if you're doing jumping jacks in your living room, we're going to sweat. We're going to breathe. We're going to not eat so much crappy junky processed food. That would literally make massive differences in black health that the healthcare system could never, ever provide. They can't do that because we pretty much show up to the healthcare system after we're almost dead. Look at all these black men that are dropping like flies in their 50s. because of stuff that could have easily been prevented, right? So, shout out to Irv Gotti, a brilliant man who should have had another 30 years on this earth, but now he's in heaven with my mama, right? Who also could have had some issues that could have been prevented, okay? So, with that being said, there are things we can rally around. That's my point. My point is that there are things that we can rally around. If I say, should black people have more wealth? It don't matter, you Democrat, Republican, whatever. You're gonna be like, yeah, of course. Should black people be more financially secure? Yeah. Are they happier when they're financially secure? Yeah. So where's the financial security plan? Oh, I got one. I got a PhD in finance. I got a plan. Can we try? Can we try to? Can we try? Can I talk? Are y'all gonna just listen to the rappers, yeah, or in the comedians? Because I got a plan, right? So this ain't hard. Black leadership ain't hard. Everybody is a black leader. Lead your damn self. Al Sharpton can't do nothing but lead you to the barbershop where he got that perm. That's all he gonna lead you to is he gonna lead you to a better perm. God bless him with his silky hair. All right, anyway, let me keep going. All right. With that said, it says here that ethno-aggregation on page 277 of the Black History Reader by Dr. Claude Anderson, found on powernomics.com. Ethno-aggregation is important for blacks to adopt as a part of their culture. It could aid black Americans in a number of ways. First, ethno-aggregation could correct the negative effects of failed social integration, which strip blacks of the positive benefits of their skin color commonality and historical exceptionality. What that means is they watered you down. They watered you down. You were sweet and pure and just straight to the bloodstream. The black is so beautiful. You ever see just black people, like a bunch of black people on stage and just be thinking, man, we are such a pretty people. We are just gorgeous. And they just kind of watered us down. They made us like these white people in blackface, and that took away a lot of our uniqueness. I don't want to live in a colorblind society. I want to live in a colorful society. Unlike all other socio-political outgroups, blacks scattered themselves in the integration process instead of unifying to strengthen and protect themselves. Ethno-aggregation can be the basis for group unity and the coming together of black individuals into a virtual group and a national team that, with concentrated resources, through ethno-aggregation, blacks as a group can place their own self-interest first before all other groups. Be one, black first. Be one, black first. That's all that means. Nothing wrong with that. The more concentrated their resources, the greater their group impact and competitive advantage will be. For Black Americans, the ethno-aggregation paradigm can be a cure or antidote for meritorious manumission. Meritorious manumission, if you don't remember, that's where slaves were compensated for selling out other black people. Meritorious manumission is a strategy of black individuals working against group interests in exchange for personal benefits, right? The rich Negro sitting on the hill who made his money by embarrassing the entire community, or the rich black woman on the hill who made her money by making black women look ridiculous, right? And I resent that. I have an issue with that. It is a hard truth that we live in a capitalistic and competitive society in which power and wealth follow the numbers. The individual things people do yield great power when their achievements are viewed as emanating from the power of a group. An aggregated group has a competitive advantage over one with scattered resources. Likewise, ethno-aggregation is most effective when the resources are organized and directed toward a common and specific purpose, in this case, black self-sufficiency and competitiveness as a group. Whites dominate and control the society because they are the population with the greatest ownership of concentrated resources. Group power does not emanate from what a single white person owns and controls, but from what whites as a group own and control. They control collectively and behave in their group's self-interest first. A black person can succeed individually, but if the person fails to identify with and connect with his group, then the group does not gain in strength and competitiveness. So this is important to understand for all of us bougie Negroes who think that we're contributing because we got a great job or you got on TV or something like that. If the group is not benefiting, then there's no benefit. There's nothing that you've really done matters a whole lot if it doesn't spread, if it's not contagious. If the success is not contagious on a broad scale, then who cares? Okay, you're another guy who got an NBA contract. Good for you, but you didn't systematize your Success, right? You didn't metastasize it, so to speak. You didn't get it down into the bloodstream. You didn't really get it down into the community on a systemic level, right? So, and you could have done that, right? For example, my goal of metastasizing my success, so to speak, I use that term just because I heard it from when they talked about cancer, but this is a good cancer. This is not bad. And I use that term because I think about the fact that every single day when I'm talking to thousands and thousands of people and grabbing information and knowledge out of my head and sharing it with the world. It's like and then encouraging you and guiding you on the way to systematize everything you're doing by incorporating that in your family and incorporating that in your community. Then that tells me, okay, boys, you're doing something good today because there are other people that are going to be able to elevate because of all the hard work that you put in, everything that I put into to get the doctorate, which was really, really hard to do, is having an impact in a way that's meaningful, right? And it's not just getting your attention. That's the first step. It's really about getting you to change behavior and getting you to organize and to work with others and getting you to I'm in class right now. I'll be out in a minute. Okay, that was my that's what see they come up and they knock on my door and then when I don't open it, they keep knocking and then they start pulling on the door and then the door comes off the hinges, then I get pissed. That's my life. That's my life, y'all. All right. Back to so frustrated dad voice has to leave the room now. We're gonna go back to scholarly voice. So anyway, so here is so here is the deal, right? The deal is the goal. This is the goal, and I want y'all to know what the goal is. The goal for me every day is um how do I make sure that everyone that we don't have any ambiguity about this simple idea, the simple fact. The what I don't what I want to make sure is 100% crystal clear is that it is very simple to implement economic plans that will change your family for the next 10 generations. Very easy, very simple. Now, it's probably simple for me because I have a doctorate in this. I taught college students for 30 years. So sure, absolutely. It's clearer to me than most people, but I can also make it clear to you. I can make it clear to your 7-year old. Okay. And then once I make that clear, so we don't run around saying, well, we ain't got nothing called white people don't teach that us nothing. You don't need nobody to teach you nothing. You know it. You the answers are available. So stop that. Stop using that excuse. Then at that point, my goal is to say, okay, now you've been deputized, right? I've touched you now. I've given you what you need and I want you to go run with it. And I want you to run proudly with it. And I want you to understand that you are the black leader you've been waiting for. This is a self-esteem exercise. That means I don't need you like sitting around waiting on a civil rights leader. I don't want you waiting on Umar to build that school that ain't that ain't been built after 20 years. I don't want you waiting on anybody. I want you to say, okay, I'm grabbing this baton, I'm running with this sucker. Because you got your community, you got your family, you have your circle, you have your church, you have your people. And this is important to you. I know it is because you're here. You know, a lot of people, and they'd rather go, watch Netflix and stuff, right? And then at that point, the last piece is getting you to just be consistent in terms of the implementation and really guiding and kind of saying, hey, you form a family investment club, you get together once a week, and this is how you do it, right? And then next thing you know, we've got a little school system popping up in this mug. At that point, we've got de facto chapters all around the world where certain ideas, and these are not all my ideas. I mean, some of them I've kind of added my twist to certain things, right? I've created my own economic models to some extent, but black economics is not something that I invented. Marcus Garvey has talked about it. Lots of people at Booker T talked about it. Booker T built a whole beautiful institution, Tuskegee, one of the most beautiful schools I ever saw. I was so impressed when I was at Tuskegee. And he did that because he said, look, just cast your buckets down and get your ass to work. We stop waiting on everybody else. We got this. We can do this. And I'm gonna tell you the truth. I like W.E.B. Du Bois, and his name is kind of like mine, so that's kind of cool. But I don't identify with that as much because I don't really want everybody to run off and try to get a job at Harvard because Harvard ain't gonna hire all of y'all. But I do like what Booker T was talking about. It's like build an institution so you can house the masses. You build the institutions so you can take care of your own. You build the institution so you have something that is yours that you can park your children in and you can take care of your own. And then you don't necessarily have to beg and hope for somebody to start a DEI program or somebody to invite you to their table. To hell with their table. Your table's better than their table. Why are you begging for a seat at an inferior table? That's the part that bothers me. So let's keep going here. Let's keep reading here. All right. So it says here. Ethno-aggregation encourages blacks to unite with their own. This is page 278 of the Black History Reader by Dr. Claude Anderson. The books are at powernomics.com. Ethno-aggregation encourages blacks to unite with their own people before seeking to unite with members of other groups. It encourages blacks to pool their tangible and intangible resources. A fist has greater impact than five separate fingers. For example, blacks come together when they attend church or when they participate in a civil rights march or demonstration. If the dollars aggregated at church were targeted to build a credit union, or if a demonstration was targeted specifically to demand government funds for starting and growing black owned businesses, those blacks gathering together would become examples of ethno-aggregation. Ethno-aggregation is a tool for blacks to use to practice group based competitive economics targeted specifically to the goals, needs, and history of their group. So there we go. This is the and we this is like, believe it or not, this is the end of the book kind of, but it's not really like the total end. Like there's still a few things that we didn't that we did not that we did not get through. Actually, we read a lot of it though. We read a big chunk of it, but I wanted to read the part about ethno-aggregation because I think that is relevant in light of kind of what's happening with DEI and the concerns that a lot of us have in terms of, in terms of where we are now. Now, one thing that's interesting here, there, on page 264 of the Black History Reader, Dr. Anderson asks a question. He says, question 95, have you heard that laziness is a black disease? So he says, negative myths about black people abound. One of the most interesting and amusing theories of slave misbehavior was put forth. This is a doctor who said this, by Dr. Samuel Cartwright in Louisiana. In 1851, Dr. Cartwright, a prominent Louisiana physician, published an essay in the New Orleans Surgical Journal entitled Report on the Diseases and Physical Peculiarities of the Negro Race. And this is not long ago. This is what, 170 years ago. In the article, Cartwright claimed to have discovered two mental diseases unique to blacks that he believed justified their enslavement. See, this is the reason why you got to be careful about your scientists, is because scientists who have cultural biases are going to find science and find statistics that justifies their bias. So he says here that let's see here. He coined his own terms, calling his newly discovered diseases drapetomania, a disease that causes black slaves to run away. So if you ran away, they called you mentally ill. And the other called dysesthesia aethiopica. I'm not good with medical words, forgive me. A disease that causes rascality, like you a little rascal, rascality in both free and enslaved blacks. Dr. Cartwright claimed these diseases caused blacks to have an uncontrollable urge to get away from their slaveholders or to be disobedient, disrespectful, and lazy. That is funny. Yeah, running away is a disease. Then I got that one. I had that one my whole life. I'm definitely a, I'm definitely a candidate for those symptoms. Dr. Cartwright did not apply his diagnosis of drapetomania disease to white indentured servants who ran away, or did dysesthesia to lazy whites. Both of these diseases were peculiar only to black slaves. For a so-called doctor to proclaim the black slaves has a laziness disease raises at least two important questions. First, why would any slave want to be energetic, hardworking, and work for no pay to enrich those who claim ownership of him? Secondly, why would any reasonably intelligent white person go through the time and expense to fight a 4 year civil war to continue owning lazy slaves? A different perspective might have produced a different outcome if perhaps Dr. Cartwright had viewed the same behavior of running away and not working hard from the perspective of a slave. Perhaps he would have reported not a disease, but that those black slaves had finally acquired some common sense. These questions did not occur to Dr. Cartwright, and his cure for both diseases was for slave owners to simply beat the devil out of the black slaves. So that was his remedy. That was his medicine. Just beat the hell out of the slaves. In modern times, laziness has been used to explain the distinctive way some blacks pronounce some English words. Speech counselors have long attributed their pronunciations to blacks have lazy lips and lazy tongues. You have to wonder why blacks became lazy in that particular part of their anatomy, while poorly educated whites are not afflicted with such laziness. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so let's see. There's another part where he talks about Black about grave robbers and black corpses. This is interesting. He says whether in the tombs of the Middle East or in the plantation fields in America, black bodies, dead or alive, have always had high value. Of course we have. Modernization of medicine has come about in large measure because of the practice of using living and dead blacks for research. During the days of slavery and Jim Crow, white medical students were studying medicine to treat white patients, but they opposed cutting up white cadavers. One medical school administrator is said to have suggested using black bodies because the black communities could not stop whites from doing whatever they chose to do with dead blacks. The medical community began to set rules for acquiring human bodies. The moral and legal clashes that occurred over the ownership status of the human body kept the practice of medical dissections of humans illegal until 1834. Several states even prohibited dissections on executed criminals. Medical schools, however, needed bodies to train physicians. Some schools became so desperate that they turned to grave robbing. By 1878, stealing recently deceased bodies from graveyards and selling those bodies to medical schools had become a lucrative business. Grave robbing became a misdemeanor in most states, but it did not deter most schools or medical students from the practice. Although robbers sometimes stole the bodies of paupers and low-level whites, the grave sites of blacks, especially those buried in slave graveyards, were particularly vulnerable and popular simply because few whites of the day had any respect for living or dead blacks. Their relatives tended to be powerless to protest effectively. In William Wells Brown's 1853 novel, Clotel, he talks about a white doctor in association with a local college who ran ads offering to pay cash for sick enslaved blacks considered incurable by their owners. The ad boasted that black bodies acquired for medical research were, quote, producing great men of science, end quote. Often sick blacks were put to death for medical experimentation and scientific advancements. Did y'all hear that? That a lot of black folks that got sick were just put to death because they wanted to get their bodies. And we know the story about Henrietta Lacks, right? We know about her cells being used, the HeLa cells, and how they've generated billions of dollars in medical research. Places like the Mayo Clinic and stuff like that, and big pharmaceutical companies have made tens of billions of dollars, if not hundreds of billions, from the HeLa cells. All right, so let's see here. Um, Often, let's see, in Mississippi, an infamous Dr. J. Marion Sims bought slaves at slave auctions in order to conduct experimental operations with new surgical instruments that he had designed. In the 20th century, the live bodies of black prisoners were being used for medical experiments. A number of these experiments were discussed in the book Should America Pay? Slavery and the Raging Debate on Reparations, edited by Raymond Winbush, PhD. In New Orleans, Louisiana, black prisoners were used for psychosurgical experiments which involved implanting electrodes in their brains. These experiments were conducted by psychiatrists at Tulane University. So, Tulane, y'all need to write that check. Two doctors boasted in later years that the school used black prisoners in experiments because it was, quote, cheaper to use niggers than cats, end quote. Wow. The book also indicates that the CIA funded experiments on black prisoners at the Louisiana State Penitentiary to determine if certain drugs could cause loss of speech, loss of sensitivity to pain, loss of memory, or loss of willpower. Black bodies, either alive or dead, entered the 21st century still unable to protect themselves from experiments and other medical violations. And now people wonder why we don't trust the healthcare system or the government. Isn't that interesting? Let me give you all a little bit, since this is Black History Month, let me give you a one more little short story about Dr. Charles Drew and how he died. A lot of y'all may know the story, but I'm gonna read the details from Dr. Anderson. This is a big one. The Red Cross is an international organization that was founded in 1863 at a time when the country was engaged in the Civil War. The Red Cross had minimal contact with black Americans until its path intersected with that of Dr. Charles Richard Drew, a noted black physician. While working at New York's Presbyterian Hospital around 1938, he discovered that when whole blood was separated, the liquid part that contained the red cells, the plasma, could be used for transfusions. The liquid plasma could be refrigerated to make it last longer and reduce the likelihood of contamination. Liquid plasma could be stored and shipped more easily than whole blood. As a side note, I went to the Daytona 500 recently and talked to a guy who said that they're now talking about 3D printing blood. I did not know that. I did not know you could 3D print blood, but apparently that is something that is in the works because transporting blood is very expensive. And so the 3D printers can, I guess they're getting to the point where they can actually print blood, which is crazy. The discovery made it possible to give life-saving blood transfusions in many more medical situations. When the London Royal College of Surgeons veterans heard about Drew's blood plasma, they requested to use it for their injured soldiers who were in dire need of blood transfusions. He established what he called his Blood Transfusion Association to ship blood plasma to British blood banks. Shortly thereafter, the American Red Cross took his advice and established a similar blood program in the United States. The federal government became concerned that within the American Red Cross blood bank, a white person could accidentally receive a transfusion of black blood. The Red Cross, aware of the importance of federal funds, directed that all donated black blood be conspicuously labeled, then segregated from white donated blood because they didn't want that black blood. Military units were racially segregated at the time, and the government did not want the blood supplies commingled. Dr. Drew protested the Red Cross decision, arguing that there's no physical difference in the blood of whites and blacks. However, both the military and the American Red Cross clung to their blood prejudices throughout World War II, and Drew resigned in protest over the policy. In 1949, both the United States Army and the American Red Cross reversed their racial policies and stopped segregating blood by the donor's race, allowing all donated blood to flow together. Isn't it funny how racism just makes you stupid? Ironically, Dr. Drew died in a car accident in 1950. He was driving to a conference with three friends when the accident occurred. He was the only one who died. His death spawned many accounts and rumors, the most enduring of which is that he died at the scene because a whites only hospital refused to treat him. Actually, according to Spency Love in her book, One Blood, The Death and Resurrection of Charles Drew, he was treated in the emergency room of a small segregated hospital where two white surgeons worked hard to save his life. He had multiple injuries and died about an hour after admission. Even though the facts do not match the myth, Love recounts the story of black individuals who actually did die because they got caught in the circumstances of the myth. She says that even though the facts of the myth were not completely accurate, the myth that black blood is bad and white blood is better or something, even though the facts of the myth were not completely accurate, they reflect the reality that befell some blacks and that preservation of oral history has an enduring value. I think that's really important to understand as we end on that note. Um, I feel like our ancestors went through a lot of stuff that we're never going to learn about. And I think that's why Dr. Claude Anderson is so important because he reveals all these secrets from history. He actually has two books called Dirty Little Secrets that include historical anecdotes and information that you did not get in public school. I don't know how you feel, but I don't look to the public school to really teach us about who we are and what we've gone through. I look to the ancestors. I want to hear from my grandparents. I want to hear from your grandparents. I want to hear from people like Dr. Anderson. I want their account of what happened to them because we know for a fact that the goal is to sweep it under the rug. When you go to even the Greenwood section of Tulsa, I believe there are lots of black people in Tulsa on Black Wall Street who don't even know what happened because the government worked so hard to make sure that you don't know because they're like, oh, we got to move forward and all that. No, we don't. We move forward after you write the check and after you apologize, write the check and make things right. Because most of everything that you see all around you, everything that you see in terms of institutional setups, frameworks, and disparities occurred because of something that happened in the past. Right. So when I go to a big city, I want you to one day do this financial consciousness exercise. I want you to go when you're in a big city, I want you to look around, like if you're in Chicago or Seattle or New York, and I want you to look around and I want you to look at how many thousands and thousands of skyscrapers you see. Most of these skyscrapers cost at least a few $100 million to build. And I want you to ask yourself, I wonder how many of these skyscrapers are owned by black people. How many of these billion-dollar skyscrapers are owned by black people? You're lucky. You're lucky if you have one. Maybe I got one. I don't. You probably don't. 99, if not 100% white owned. That is due to the disparity. That's a direct reflection of the stolen wealth. And this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're up against. So one step toward reacquiring that wealth is to educate our children, so that when they get older and they get into the game of competitive economics, they're going to win the competition. They're going to show up with all the skills and the tools. Because remember, wealth. Warren Buffett says this, and because I like Warren Buffett. He said that wealth is a transfer from impatient people to patient people. It's also a transfer from those who lack knowledge to those who have knowledge. So if your children show up and they're trained according to things like the KID model, knowledge, investment, discipline, or the sturdy model, systems, technology, entrepreneurship, relationships, and delegation, or they understand the poise model, producer, owner, investor, saver, entrepreneur, and they've been drilled on these things, then they're going to show up with all the knowledge and all the patience and all the skill. So even if America never writes that check, even if they never do the right thing, right, even if they never give us the reparations we deserve, oh, we about fin to take those reparations right back. Our kids will show up and they will take it. They will take it because if you don't understand that wealth is a competition, then I need we need to talk more because you're just in a competition. You're in a basketball game where the other team cheated and they're 50 points ahead. But still, if you show up with a killer jump shot and you can hit those three pointers and layups and jump out of the gym, you can score points in this game. You can get back in the game. Our kids will get back in the game. Most of you who have children that are doing what I've been talking to you about, the master plan, which is getting your kids ready on wealth early, starting them early. Don't wait till they're 20 years old. Start them when they're 6. When you're doing that, your kids are going to have more wealth than the average white person because white people are not doing this. Jewish people are not even doing this. Asian people are not doing this. Arab people aren't doing this. So we are the next generation of wealthy families. It just takes time. It just takes time. So keep doing what you're doing. Keep moving. You are your own greatest black leader. I got your back. And even if I never ever talk to you ever again, it's okay because I've got like 20,000 different videos I've done specifically to preserve my tiny piece of the legacy that we're building in this generation. Because ain't nobody ever done what we're doing right now. We're making history. We're making black history, and we about to take this thing all the way to the finish line. So God bless you. Thank you guys for hanging out with me tonight. I appreciate you. I'm about to go see why my wife was banging on my dang door. And again, if you want to do business with us and you want to buy our books at a really cheap price and resell them for your book club and make money, turn it into a business and a stream of income, feel free to go to 10commandments.boycewatkins.com. That's the number 10, 10commandments.boycewatkins.com. Or if you want the workbooks for the kids, we have the financial workbooks for kids. They cover every single grade band and cover stocks, investing, and money. So if you'd like to go take a look at that and get those really cheap and resell those or give them away, whatever you want to do, you can go to financialworkbooks.com. That's financialworkbooks.com. Use this code, write this code down. The code is morning70, all one word, morning70. Put that code in right at checkout and it'll reduce the price from like $40 down to 12 or something like that. So you can do whatever you want to do. It's up to you guys. And I just want to encourage you and support you in every step of the way. All right. So I'll see you all tomorrow morning. I hope you have a great night. Thank you guys for listening. Love you much. See you.